Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for the privilege of being here. I've been to quite a few of the faculties, and it's every time been a huge privilege and a wonderful opportunity to just be around here and share. But what we're going to do today, as I said, is I'm just going to do a very short presentation, and it will be basically just the beginning will be a bit, not academical. I've tried to keep it very basic and down to the earth. But we'll just look what happens when we experience trauma, and then from there on we will go in a bit of a discussion. I think everybody has been a bit shaken, and I've used this one, so sorry for those who've heard it, but I came to this one company and the lady said to me, I'm really trying to be cool about this whole thing. And I said, okay. She said, I'm really trying to be like James Bond and say shaken but not stirred. She said, but I just can't. I'm shaken, stirred, and everything that goes with it. So it had a huge effect on our lives. And the interesting thing for me was, and we just had a little bit of a discussion beforehand, and it's like, there's so many things that are happening now. You know, the first thing you do when you come into a building is you look what can fall on your head, and you look if there's cracks in the building, and if the car in the front of you, driving in front of you, if it goes up and down, you know you need to slow down because there's a few humps in the road, and all those things has happened. So let's just have a quick glance at what is happening with us when we are traumatized. As I've said before as well, trauma, and I want to start off with that, is one of the most, for me, sensitive areas in our lives. Because in trauma, there's no set rules. There's a few guidelines, but every person are experiencing it differently. Some people that haven't even been exposed to severe traumatic experiences during the earthquake are now experiencing severe stress and trauma. Some people that has been in a building that has collapsed are coping quite okay. So each person is so different. And in my own life, I've been exposed to a lot of trauma. I've even done my PhD on trauma, and still I do not know that much about trauma. So it is a very sensitive, and I would be very respectful today because we are going to share sensitive things and it might touch somewhere. So we'll be very respectful with that. What we have here is the basic, very basic thing of our brains from the top. Luckily we do not have colored brains. Isn't that wonderful? But we've got, like many of us would know, the left and the right side functions. Nothing new there for you, but on the left side more cognitive, the right side more the emotional stuff. And on the left side, your analytical thoughts, logic, language, which is very important, the language, the verbal side. On the right side, the holistic thought, intuition, creativity, art, and music. So why this is important is that, and I'll quickly just dot to that, or that's just the game one. Everybody must have seen it, eh? I love it. So let's give it a go, you know. The first one, yellow, green. And it's that whole thing, you know, as it says down here, the right brain tries to say the color, but the left brain insists on reading the word. And that is what happens. We see that with little children when they grow up and their verbal skills haven't developed, and they perceive a mum that is not caring and possibly a bit harsh. And then when the child grows up and the verbal skills develop and the mum says, I love you, the child perceives that with the left side. However, all the actions, all the stuff that has happened to him is perceived on the right side. And now there's all of a sudden a discrepancy. And that is what happens. When we are traumatized, the Corpus Callosum, which connects the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, just stops communicating. And that's wonderful. That's how we've been created. That is a wonderful protection mechanism in our bodies. Because they say if we are exposed to trauma and we have to experience it full on, that we would possibly just, you know, explode. The brain would just not be able to handle it. So to protect us, the communication between the left and the right side of the brain is stopped when there's trauma, severe trauma or crisis happening. And that's wonderful. It protects us. But in the long run, we have this, and there's much more newer research, so please don't worry about the 1998. I know that's not very good to put up an old date of research, but this guy just puts it very nicely. He says in a normal person, the two hemispheres and their respective minds are in balance and interact harmoniously. However, when they are out of balance, mental illness may result. So what happens? If the brain keeps communicating what is happening, that's okay. If we are really traumatized and we have all these images, people were reporting the most horrific images. We've been working with so many people and I've just been dumbfounded. I'm just sitting there and thinking, wow, it's amazing what people have experienced. Some said the masonry falling down. Other people said the sound, just the sound of the rumbling. Others said the dust. For each person there was this images, this perceptions that has been captured, and they're carrying this around. And it's sort of all now stored in the right frontal side of the brain, and it's sort of stuck a bit there. And that's why we do sometimes feel a bit emotional. I hope you guys do too, because I do sometimes. And it's a bit uncomfortable at times just to feel these emotions coming up. And when you hear all these things and deal with these things, I've even had people sharing that there's deep grief and loss in their hearts for a city that they've come to love. And we've been in Christchurch for many years, and we've really come to love this city. And all of a sudden, all that was sort of characteristic of Christchurch is just not there anymore. So there's a lot of stuff happening for people. And what happens here, because that communication has stopped for that moment when we were traumatized in whatever way, we are now, but there's a lot of stuff happening, and we can be, because there's a discrepancy between the left and the right side of the brain. Let's move on for a moment. I've just put this one in. It's something, not that I've developed, it's just a basic thing about the dynamics of a crisis. And I want to put this in because I want to encourage us today. I want us to go away with a very positive thinking about this. And the whole dynamics of a crisis is, if we would say that a person is a little triangle, luckily I don't say you're a square, so that's okay. But if I say you're a little triangle, and the triangle is sort of stable and it's situated in a balanced way, you know, between positive and negative, and everything is okay, and then something happens. It can either be a whole few things happening, or it can be one big thing like an earthquake. The first thing we do is, in our minds, we go back to previous experiences. But for many of us, there wasn't a previous experience. Of course, the 4th of September was horrible. My wife was just terrified with the darkness and everything, but being, you know, literally shaken out of bed and whatever. But that was hopefully the last one we had. That didn't happen. So when we are traumatized, this triangle is turned around, and we are now on a very sensitive point in our lives. And that's where we need to be sensitive about trauma. One of the other groups I've spoken to said, we're not really into this feely, fluffy stuff. And I said, no, that's okay. But this is where the feely, fluffy stuff comes in. Because we have to be very sensitive. If this triangle is standing on its little narrow point below, it can easily topple to the one or the other side. And therefore we need to be so sensitive for people's needs and where they are at. It might not happen immediately. Some people have immediately shown the signs of trauma and stress. Some people have immediately started going in and showing symptoms, etc. Some people are saying, we're fine, I'm fine, coping all right. The danger of that is sometimes stress and trauma can actually have a bit of a delayed onset. I try not to bring too much personal stuff in, but for me, myself, many, many years ago, I was from South Africa, and we were obliged, it was compulsory to go to the army. You didn't have an option, or you could go to jail, but I thought that doesn't sound too nice, so went to the army and was involved in the Angola War, and in that process I was in a bomb explosion where I lost my arm, my back, my buttock, everything were blown away. I physically died. They had to resuscitate me a few times. went through all of this, was paralyzed for a while because of pressure on my spine, etc. And I was actually, people were amazed. They said, wow, you're coping so well. You are amazing, you know. And I thought, oh, that's nice. Good to know, you know. I must be a tough guy, you know. 6 months later, I just literally crumbled into a heap and was later diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder with delayed onset. You see, so it doesn't always show immediately. The signs and the symptoms might not be clear for us immediately, and therefore we need to be so cautious. And I am a bit worried. No, that's the wrong word, just concerned. Because we've had this adrenaline rush, we had this hype, and now everything is over, all that, but we are still faced with the reality of what is happening. And now people are tired, emotionally tired. I've spoken to so many people that said to me, you know, I go to bed, I even have a good sleep, and when I wake up, I'm tired. Other people are struggling with symptoms of the stress, having insomnia, just being woken up by the shakes. Don't know what to call it, the quakes. I've heard all the most funny things. I am unluckily a comfort eater. So I do like to have a few comfort foods when I'm stressed. And we've been working so hard and everything has been so overwhelming. And the other day I was at the other group and the lady very kindly said to me, don't worry, it's just a bit of quake weight. So I'm saying, okay, thank you, that's very kind, it helps to know. So don't worry, it's just quake weight. But what happens here, if that triangle would topple to a positive side in a positive way, people would grow. And that's the exciting thing. And I know that sounds horrible to say when we talk about trauma, there's exciting stuff in it. Trauma and a crisis is always a wonderful start for new life, for opportunities, for growth. And if you can come through a trauma and you can grow through it, it becomes a wonderful way of a growth process. It just develops. You just grow through it and you get excited. And the next time you experience trauma, you're not looking forward to it, but you are much more able to handle it in a positive way. While if people are experiencing this whole thing very negative and there's very little support for them, and this triangle topples to the negative side, people go into a downward spiral where they just continue to, every time there's a crisis or a negative thing, they feel, it's the same again, you know, overwhelming, etc. But all right, let's move on. This is the exciting part. I've heard a lot of people talking about an earthquake brain. And I just went back. I thought maybe I've missed something in my studies. But I couldn't find anything of an earthquake brain. So don't worry, it's not an academical term. But what it actually is that when we are traumatized, we have this wonderful area in the brain, which is called the primal part, which is just above the brain stem. And what happens is all the blood and the oxygen and things goes there when trauma happens because we're in survival mode. Survival mode is that wonderful thing, the 3 F's, we all know that. Fight, flee or freeze. I've had a classic example of the freeze one. My lovely wife with the first earthquake, and we've never experienced something like that before, and it was really scary. And we were in Brooklyn's Kayinga area, which was quite rough the previous time, and we were shaken out of bed, and I'm looking for my wife, and it's all pitch dark, and I'm, you know, where are you? And here she's standing. We've been in many countries, so she's got a Coke collection of all the different Coke memorabilia in this, you know, shelves there. And here she's standing like this in front of the Coke. And I'm going, Monica! And she's still standing there. And about the second time or third time I called her, she sort of clicked out of it and said, you know, some people just freeze up when this happens. Others would try to get away from it as quick as possible. And other people fight, which is they really go into action. And I've heard many cases where people just took things together, organized people and said, let's do this, do that, you know, go there, don't go there. One of the guys said, luckily he was sort of very focused to organize. They were in the Forsyth Bar building, and he said he was really geared to get all the people and get them all underneath the staircase. Luckily he didn't, he just froze up and he couldn't do it. So, but you know, there's so many different reactions for people. So what happens, the other parts of the brain is a bit deprived of oxygen. There's so many other things that is occupying us, and we're so in the survival mode that our memory, our concentration, all those things goes a bit. And I've had so many people say, man, I'm so good with what I'm doing. I can do this whole process in 15 minutes on the computer. It now takes me half a day. I'm trying to send emails, which I usually just do before tea time, you know, morning tea, and now, you know, I'm at afternoon tea and still struggling to do it. And I think we need to acknowledge that, because people are struggling and the brain has just been a bit really traumatized through this whole thing. What can be expected? Let's look at it. Shock and numbness, that's just that whole thing of when it initially happens and whatever around that. I'm not going to be too much in that. The numbness is that we sort of tend to, when we get overwhelmed, we go into a dissociative mood or a numbness, and we just say, look, this is enough. The brain says, I've had enough, and we stand back. Disbelief or denial, I think that's the big thing. It's the old thing where we say, man, this can't happen. You hear about it and everybody will go and get your little emergency kit ready, and you know, you don't know where you will be when it happens, and all those advertisements, and you're thinking, yeah, right. And the next moment it happens, and the family is all over town, and it takes you 5 hours to get home, and people were walking home, I heard, and you know, it was just chaos all over. And many of the roads, especially to the eastern side, were so damaged. So it's just that disbelief. Some people said to me it was like I was standing outside and looking into a horror movie. People that were in the city centre, and said, I rushed out of this building and just see how things is collapsing, and then I came outside and felt safe, and the next moment the road is popping up with water, and just didn't feel safe there. And she said, I just couldn't get anywhere. It was like in a horrible dream where you try to run and get away, and you just can't get away. So just that sort of experiences, that disbelief. Intrusive memories, that's quite an important thing for us to be cautious of. I'll just now come to some danger signs. If you are sitting and you just all of a sudden have these intrusive memories and thoughts coming in, it is a bit of a danger sign. We'll get back to that in a moment. Avoiding behaviors, that's the interesting one. What happens is the avoiding behaviors, we avoid places. People will avoid buildings, parking garages. A very stupid example is myself. I've been through quite a few trauma situations, but the big one was on the 11th of March. So when the 11th of March comes around and it's totally irrational, I go, you know, and I'm thinking, uncomfortable. So I overcame it. I did all the right things. I'll just now say what we can do to overcome that, and I overcame it, and I was really okay with it. And then my son, many years ago, he's now a grown man, but when he was at school in Blenheim, he got involved in mountain biking, and that was lovely. And his dad wanted to lose some weight, so I got into mountain biking, did the Rainbow Roads, and ended up on the 15th of March in the intensive care in Nelson. So with about 8 broken bones. So from that day, anything from the 11th of March till the 15th of March was a difficulty. That's how our brains work. We associate. And that is a problem, because we now think a big building, high-rise buildings. I spoke to a lady the other day, and I'm very strict on confidentiality, so just very vaguely. And I was just saying, look, we need to sometime do desensitization, just in a very relaxed and controlled and supportive manner, get you back to be exposed to just being between buildings. And she just immediately went into a frenzy and said, no way, I'm just not going there. So people are avoiding car parks. The other day I had to be at a farmer's in Hornby, and I rushed over there from one job to another one, and wanted to get parking, but there was no parking. Every place is filled up on the outside, and in the end I went into the parking garage, and it's totally open. Just a few cars. And the first thing you do when you get out is you just, you know, check for cracks and etc. So let's leave that. But that is a very big thing for us. And people, what can we do? Somebody asked that question, and it's like, The whole thing is desensitization. So it's a very dangerous thing to do, but it's like having support with you and sitting down and thinking about it and taking all these emotional stuff and bringing it over to the verbal side. That's how we get a release of this. We actually bring the emotional stuff over to the verbal side of the brain and communicate it. But then slowly to be exposed. They call it little steps. So you take one little step closer to a place where you feel very uncomfortable and you look around and you say, look, everything is okay. And it's going to be okay. So you slowly do that until you are exposed to this, what is the danger thing for you. Physical reactions, some of the physical reactions, stress, tense, stomach tighten up, shakings, insomnia, overeating, undereating, all those things. Fear, anxiety, there's a lot of people with immense fears, and that dear friend of ours with his predictions didn't help that very much. Helplessness, out of control, big thing for many people. I do tend to ask, who of you like to be in control? Or shouldn't I ask? The whole thing is I like things in little boxes. And I like things to be perfect and right and ready and on time and, you know, all those nice things. And when an earthquake happens, nothing is in control. You've got no control over it, you're completely powerless. And for a lot of people, the loss of control is a huge thing. Somebody the other day mentioned that while they were struggling to get home, you know, and it's just cars and, you know, liquefaction and everything, he saw this old man mowing his lawns. And he was stunned. And when we sat down and thought about it, we thought that was his little place where he could do something to have things under control. And for a lot of people that happens. My son is a clinical psychologist, and he phoned, you know, after the first earthquake, very concerned, you know, Dad, how is Mum? No, she's fine. What is she doing? Oh, she's throwing away everything she can find. And he said, Dad, she's not okay because she's a hoarder. You know, she wants everything, you know, and she's just throwing away everything. Second earthquake, son phones. Dad, how's Mum? No, she's fine. What is she doing? No, she's cleaning everything she can find. You know, it's just that thing. I want to have something that I can do, that I can feel I'm in control of. All right. Anger. I've had people being angry about anything you can think of. People not making sure that the city is safe, which is a bit irrational again, but be okay, because a lot of feelings with trauma is irrational. Okay. Oh, I can mention hundreds of things people were angry about. Sadness about the city, etc. Let's move on. Big concern. If you can see in your well-being that there's a growth, that you are going upwards, and every day you're a bit better, and there's a bit of less stress, less sleeping a bit better, etc., fine. Our concern is when some of these things are constantly occurring, especially after a month still. If you have serious flashbacks, dreams, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, the nightmares specifically around stuff that has happened with the earthquake, fear, anxiety, avoidance to a max, where the avoidance is actually influencing your and debilitating your normal daily living, avoidance, detachment, where you really start detaching from people and situations, insomnia, anger, irritability, also to extreme concentration problems and hypervigilance, that everything startles you. When these things are ongoing and they are controlling your life, please get some help, because this is the first, and this is not totally according to the DSM-4, but this is basic, your first danger signs for post-traumatic stress disorder, which can be, and I have suffered from it, it can be quite a debilitating effect in your life. And unluckily, there are people that are going to suffer from that. Okay, what can we do? Taking care. The first thing, routines, familiarity is comforting. Keeping up normal activities, treasure familiar things. Getting into a normal as possible. Stay connected, we need each other. This is the big time to stay in touch with family and friends. My son is a bit of a big boy. He's about 6'5" and really a big fellow, and he loves his mum and dad, and he's our only child, and we love him dearly. But you know, it's sort of an unspoken thing. Man, it was so nice with these earthquakes, getting all these texts. Mum, Dad, I love you. Oh, I loved it. Sorry, please, now I'm saying a horrible thing. Just for that, there can be another one. But you know what I'm saying. Just that relating, you know. And this is a time for us to connect. This is a time to be in touch. And I'm encouraging you to be in touch with your feelings, because we need to be. And especially us as men, we can sometimes feel, and please, I'm not generalizing, feel we're okay and we're in control and we'll, you know, she'll be right. But let's be in touch with those feelings and be sure where we're at, because it can be a very important thing for us later on. Save your energy for important things. What's happening? People have been drained. Every time there's a shake or there's something that startles you, there's adrenaline, you know all the things, there's endorphins, there's at least 16 different changes in your body. Pupils widens, heart starts beating faster, breathing becomes shallower, you know, all the things that prepares your body for action. And then nothing happens, you know, or not much, and you can't react to it. So the body is in a tense situation all the time. Every time that drains, you are emotionally tired, your body gets tired, you get tired. They say we need to look and prioritize at this stage. If there's something, my southern wall of my house needs to be painted, man, it can wait. Because at this stage, there's just not energy for that, and it's not a priority. Lifestyle balance, very important. Look after yourself, get your lifestyle in balance. I just wanted so much to get back to the gym, and it was closed. And then when I got back to the gym and I got in, and I just couldn't do anything. You know, just didn't have energy or motivation. So it's very difficult to get back, but please do get back as soon as possible into a lifestyle balance. And please, I keep saying to people, don't throw me with something. Just be mindful of the amount of caffeine that you are using. Caffeine is a very strong stimulant, and it will, and it's been proven in a lot of research, it will heighten your stress levels quite a bit. So what relaxes you is making the cuppa and sitting down. But afterwards the nicotine, for the nicotine one, but also it's also a stimulant, and the caffeine will rise your stress levels. The alcohol is wonderful. A lot of people were saying, going home and just having a nice little beer or nice wine, and it relaxes. That's wonderful, it's okay. But also be again cautious for excessive, because the moment it withdraws from your body, it will create anxiety. And the strongest depressant you can buy in any bottle is still alcohol. So afterwards it might catch up with you with all the stress and stuff. Safety, protect yourself in any way. We've been overwhelmed with images. We've been overwhelmed with so much. Step away from it. We've seen enough. We had Japan after that. We had the Pike River mine thing last year. We had September 4th. We had February 22nd. It's just too much. I was like that, you know, coming home from work, and it's all this stuff, and everybody is telling me all the stuff that happened to them. And the first thing I go, what has happened? You know, Monica goes, yeah, look, that's happened, you know, and there's now so many people missing and what. It's okay to be updated, but step back. We've had enough. We are overwhelmed, most of us, with all the images and stuff. Protect yourself. And the big thing is, you're not helpless. We do find that if people go into this helpless mode, they become victims of the situation, and they feel that they are victim of what has happened. We are survivors. We have survived, we can survive, and we can move on. There's been a lot of hurt, there's been a lot of loss, but we can move on. Look after yourself, take care of yourself, be in touch with yourself. Because this is so vitally important, especially for the future. Thank you. I've so much more to say, but I've said much too much today. I'll just stop right here, and thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this, and yeah. All right, any questions? I don't have all the answers, please.
Thank you very much. Is there anything specific we should be aware of in relation to children?
I'm so glad you're asking that, because that is vitally important. The children especially are, in a way, and it's not the same for everyone, please, but they are a lot of them has been traumatized by what they've seen by the parents, because they're looking up to the parent or the adults in their school or wherever as the ones that's in control. And all of a sudden, some of those people were not in control. So they felt completely overwhelmed. There's a lot of stuff that will happen. The same with the kids. Re-experiencing the flashbacks, I think that's a very important one. A lot of kiddies are sort of traumatized just by the images that they recall. We've even had quite a few of the children traumatized by the tsunami in Japan. Because I had a little girl the other night, and she was just terrified, and she said, we're living close to the sea. I know the sea is going to come and take my home and my mummy and daddy. And so, you know, children cannot always distinguish between the reality and these images they have. So that's very important. Things we need to look at children, they will feel numb, lose interest in activities, feeling worried and guilty. Easily started, on the edge, etc. Another thing that comes with the kiddies is symptoms can include bedwetting. So if they start showing these things, they can also display disruptive behavior, disrespectful and destructive behaviors. And that's all a way of the child to say, look, there's problems. I'm struggling coping with this. Just remember, for especially your really small kids, they have all these images in the right side of the brain, and they are struggling to verbalize it. We struggle with it, but they're even struggling more. So what I say we need to do is sit down with them, ask them where they're at, listen to them, encourage them and support them as much as possible, and do as many things as possible that will remind them of a normal situation, even if it's totally abnormal. So that's very basic. I hope that helps a wee bit. But we need to be cautious of our kids. Because they're sensitive, much more into the emotional stuff at a stage, and they are still growing up, it is a very, very important thing that we are in touch with them and just feel where they're at and really sit down and listen to them and encourage them to talk about it, because that's really important. The big thing when we encourage people to talk, we must never re-traumatize. So if you encourage people to talk, always make sure that they're comfortable and relaxed, and when they get too stressed and excited, they just ground themselves and relax a bit and not over-traumatize them. So yeah.
I was interested when you said we go back, when traumatic events happen, we go back to previous traumatic events.
Exactly.
Do you see a problem with the fact that September 4, wasn't it, was nowhere near as traumatic as this one? And so we're leaning on something which probably isn't quite as strong a thing to lean on as perhaps we might expect.
That is a wonderful perception. I've never thought about that. Thank you for that. That's actually not a question. That's a wonderful answer. I think it's wonderful because, as I've shown on that little diagram, we immediately, when we're in trauma, we immediately go back to previous experiences. When I was in that bomb explosion, there was nothing that could have prepared me for that, you know. When we're in an earthquake and you haven't experienced it, and I think the big one with September and this one was totally different. And there's nothing that could have prepared us for the enormity, the vastness, this one. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a shaky ground. It's a wonderful way you explained it. So we're referring back to that, and we immediately going back to that and saying, oh, we know, we've been there, but we haven't. Because this one was so different and it was just so vast. So yeah, I think it is a bit of a problem.
I think some people felt some guilt about that because it was termed an aftershock, and yet we all felt that it was another earthquake, and yet sometimes, well, it's an aftershock, you know. And government agencies started treating it as an aftershock until it became quite clear that its results were much more than the first one. So I think in some respects you feel a bit guilty about, you know, it's not as bad as, you know, this is only an aftershock. It's actually another earthquake, and we're allowed to feel that it is as bad or perhaps worse effect upon us personally as the first one. You know, that's a bit of a consideration as kind of like a community or global thing. You know, am I making too much of this? No, you're not making too much of it. It really, really was bad, and you allow yourself to get into that. it's not going to be the same experience, so you have to treat it as a new experience.
Absolutely.
And not say, well, it's just another aftershock. It's not. It's really, really serious.
And one thing that gets to me a bit is if people go, and I mean, people are so nice, they're so lovely, and they go, if I ask them, and you come up, how are you? How is your home and your family? Oh, no, we're fine. If we look at other people, please just stop there. We are not comparing with anybody else. What you are experiencing is very real for you. Please, people, just acknowledge and accept and be okay and embrace, we can use all those nice words, where you are at. And this was huge, and no matter, and exactly what you're saying, it's that feeling, why should I feel like this? It's not that bad, But please, no matter what you feel, what you've experienced. And the other thing is people, that was a big thing. Some people have not, their house were okay, their job is okay, they were not in a building that was falling down, all those things. And they're feeling extremely guilty because they are highly stressed, they are experiencing symptoms of trauma. Please, people, allow yourself to be in touch with it. There's no prescription that you should have been in a building to experience this, People are all experience it differently. Interesting enough, I was more traumatized by the first one than this one, but my wife is just the opposite. I mean, this time she really took it bad, and she said the worst thing was, we were at home and I was just on my way into town when it happened, and she said the worst thing was when she was standing in the kitchen and looking out and saw the little car moving, forwards and backwards, and the house bending over, and and whatever, and the things falling, and it was just too much for her this time. So every person has experienced it differently, and that's very important. Never minimize your feelings. Never minimize what you are feeling, because it's real for you, no matter how much or how little you've been exposed. Because if you're going to minimize it, you're actually suppressing it, and it's going to be a horrible thing in the future for you, because it's not going to be dealt with. That's the big thing. Talk about it, deal with it, get somebody that can. The big thing is support systems. Get as much support systems as you can. Anybody that wants to support you, use it. Not abuse it, but use it. Just let people surround you, let people enfold you, accept things. We've had it, I'm involved in quite a few organizations and stuff, and people from Auckland were offering to take people for free, free flights up to Auckland, treat them there for a fishing weekend for some of the males and whatever, and fly them back. And we were presenting it to people, and they were going, no, give it to somebody else, I'm okay, And I know this person needs it, I don't know why we're being so nice, it's wonderful, but accept it, grab it, Yeah, I'm getting distracted, but that was a wonderful point, because we must never minimize what we're feeling. About the guilt, it's not in the right context, because survivor guilt is when you are in a serious situation where people around you die and you survive it. I had that in the war situation, but survivor's guilt, it's not the right terminology, but a lot of people are experiencing guilt where they were saying, look, we're okay, we still have everything, we didn't, lose a house or been traumatized, blah, blah, blah. Don't feel guilty. Be thankful, because even those guilt feelings are draining to your emotions and your energy. So, is it time for us to close off and go now? Well, we can come with a lot of nice academical stuff, but in the end, it's like the best thing we can do is to rationalize it. And I know that's horrible to say. And that is just keep on reassuring ourselves that, we'll be okay. But the problem is the previous time we said it with September 4th, a lot of people were saying we had a big one, nothing is going to happen again. And we reassured a lot of people with that. And then this one happened. So a lot of that sort of process of getting the emotional stuff over, the irrational stuff over to the rational side has been stirred. We see the earth as solid. And somebody said, you know, we always say when we got off the plane, it's good to be on solid ground again. Now people are saying it's not solid anymore. So it's a very difficult one, but the best thing we can do is to work through these things, sit down, talk to somebody, and try to get as much as positive reassurance about the situation for yourself. Okay, so try and rationalize, think about it rationally. And it's not easy because we're stuck with all these emotional stuff. I hope I'm making sense, but it's really important that we sit down with somebody, start working through it, even make a list of things that you know, positive, negatives out of this. It is very difficult to do because when I say to people, what positives have you experienced out of this? They go, huh? Positives? You know? There's, for some people, very little positives. For others, they say, oh, there's so many beautiful things that have happened, people stood together. But it's really a process of constantly, not desensitizing, this is just rationalizing and constantly reassuring yourself that you will be okay. What is the worst scenario that can happen, you know? What is the best scenario, working through it. Some of the modern, and even my son disagrees a wee bit with me. If you really struggle with this, it's the hand. I've just developed it. It's just a combination of critical incident stress management and, you know, just a few things combined. But if you take your hand and you're really struggling with something, you say stop, look at the facts. So you sit down and you say, what is the facts? Just the facts about this thing, okay? Next, what is my feelings? No facts, just feelings. If they're irrational, that's fine. What is the symptoms that I'm experiencing? Okay, what is my body doing? Am I tensed? Is my stomach tight? What is the positive, negatives of this thing? And how am I going to re-enter? Point number 5. That's helped a lot of people because what you do is you're actually connecting the right and the left side of the brain. Through doing that, you are actually connecting the body as a whole in a holistic manner because you're looking at the symptoms. You're looking at positive, negatives, and you're saying, how can I re-enter this situation? And once you do that, it actually really just makes the whole thing much different for you. I hope. So the hand says stop, and you sit down and you literally say, look, and that really helps for stuff like this. You just say, what is the facts about this thing? You write it down. All the facts regarding this situation. You don't think about any feelings. The second one, you say, what is the feelings? Okay? No facts, feelings, even if it's totally irrational. The third one you say is, what is the symptoms? You really look at your body and say, what's happening with my body when this aftershock happens? And you write it down. And then you go, what is the positive and negatives of the situation? And then you say, how am I going, the fifth one, re-enter the situation. This has been quite a practical and very helpful thing for people to do, to just desensitize themselves, get the left and the right side of the brain and the whole body united. And yeah.